Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this chat, or for not leaving after that excellent chat we just had. We are here today. We might see on the agenda, we're doing, it's not so much like a vendor pitch. It more comes out of the kind of customer success story kind of area of KCD talks. I'll let you decide how successful it is at the end of the chat. Who are we chatting about? My name's Duncan Wright. I'm a senior platform engineer working at Baillie Gifford. I'm joined by Andrew Garner, who's also on the platforms team. Our other colleague, Chris, contributed to these slides, but couldn't be here today. So, we left him in there just for, getting the credit as well. Baillie Gifford itself, we're an investment management firm. So like a lot of the businesses in Edinburgh, highly regulated, work in finance. I'm sure people in the room will know what that's like. We were founded and headquartered and have remained in Edinburgh since 1908. That's a slightly misleading sentence, like we left, but we've been here for 117 years, well-known local business. So, we're a good pick for representing KCD in Edinburgh today. Across the firm, there's about 1,600 people, about 500 of those across the dev and infrastructure teams, and they are serviced by a platform team of about 12 people. So that's just to give you the scale of what kind of company size we are. Today, we'll chat about where we were at pre-migration, this new modern Kubernetes setup that we'll talk to you about today. How we built that platform, decisions we made. A lot of them, of course, are Kubernetes related, but it's also touching on Terraform and other platform decisions we made. The great migration, once we built it, we have to get people to actually use it and the various problems that comes with. A little look at where we are now, and then I'll look at the future, to see what kind of things are coming. The idea with this chat is just hopefully it'll spark some ideas within you, or discussions, or something along those lines that you might try and implement yourselves. So, before, in the past, we had a number of on-premises self-hosted clusters, or semi-self-hosted. We used PKS, the Pivotal Container Service from VMware, largely due to just an existing vendor relationship more than anything else. This came with a number of challenges. It was a kind of non-standard implementation of Kubernetes. Upgrades could be difficult, a lot of support calls and whatnot. So, this is where we were. With all these points, they're kind of points of friction that came from decisions that were good at the time, but aged less well, perhaps. We provisioned those clusters and configured all the tooling within them with imperative scripts. We've heard a lot of chats today about declarative v imperative. The kind of overriding kind of idea at the time was that there was no problem that Bash couldn't solve, and that's what drove this kind of thing. But these were kind of largely fire and forget. They weren't great for error handling and all those things that I'm sure you'll have come across. We ran those scripts using Azure DevOps pipelines. We're largely a Microsoft house, use a lot of Azure tools. Azure DevOps pipelines have their place, like GitHub Actions. They're good for CI/CD, but not necessarily for something that's less frequent, like these cluster creation and upgrade processes. And throughout all this, we had no concept of state. So once you ran these scripts, you create your clusters. How did you know what was actually there and live and in production? People could change things in production, and then we would have no idea until you ran the script again and saw some sort of problem. So that's where we were. Absolutely fine. Like I say, the decisions were made. They were well-intentioned at the time, but over time, they caused friction. That's kind of where we are. And so we thought, what kind of targeted improvements could we see? What could we get from migrating both to the cloud and changing the ways that we structure our clusters? And the number one improvement, was cost saving. So at the time, we were looking at buying a new hardware on-prem and whether it was worth the capital expenditure versus operational. We looked at moving to the cloud and thought there was a huge chance for cost saving there. Obviously, one of the things is you only pay for what you use, so that's an obvious kind of benefit. We were moved to then a single managed platform. We had PKS on-prem. We also then dabbled with Azure Kubernetes Service, AKS. We were then writing the scripts to work for two different environments. It was getting messy. Going into one single platform, of course, simplifies everything, and the fact that it's managed for you is a huge bonus. So, again, easy for us, people on call, etc. Working in Azure, working in the cloud, allowed us to be more cloud native with our development processes, as in we were closer to all the resources in the cloud. It simplified the way that we produce things and just chat between resources. We then wanted to implement infrastructure as code and GitOps, which have been covered in a few chats today. Everything's declarative, everything's in version control, all the benefits that you get from using these methodologies. We wanted to kind of use that, basically. And finally, automated upgrades. For people that had to be on call and do PKS upgrades, it was a bit of a nightmare. Now we just schedule it. It happens at the end of the month or whatever we need. So these were our kind of targeted improvements, things that we upfront thought we could gain from this migration. So we had a rough idea of what we wanted. How are we actually going to build that out and create this platform? There's two of us on stage. It takes all sorts of minds, it takes all sorts of skill sets to make this happen. So I've highlighted some of them here. We had experts from multiple clouds, not just Azure. We had former developers like myself and Andrew, networking experts. We have a platform engineering team and a DevOps team when those terms kind of made a bit more sense, but now they've all kind of merged. And then there was a little bit of input from architects, a very minor input from the system design side. So yeah, it's not just the two of us on stage that did all this. When we came to building the platform, we started off with the clusters themselves, and Terraform was the obvious choice. We were well versed in it for other tools, other resources. We just never made the Kubernetes cluster side of it using Terraform before. The way we did Terraform at the time was, again, running through Azure DevOps pipelines, and we managed our own state, our own secrets, our own environments, which was less than ideal. So we looked at tooling that could help us with this, and we went for Spacelift. We don't work for Spacelift, we don't have any affiliation, but it's an absolutely cracking tool. And it's completely changed our relationship with Terraform, really. It's handles all the state for you, handles environment variables, secrets, retries, error handling, all that stuff. So, like I say, no affiliation, but that really helped us accelerate in building this platform. We then used FluxCD for the GitOps side of things. I don't want to say too much wrong about FluxCD because the actual creator and maintainer is here somewhere. So we implemented it because it just looked like it was a much more user-friendly tool for our side, from the system side, as in not application developers, which is why we didn't go for Argo at the time. And we used that to configure everything, all the standard tooling that we need on our clusters. So, you spin up a new cluster and you get the GitOps operators running on them as standard, and then it pulls in all the whatever we think the cluster config should be. And then finally, once we were happy with what we had from the platform side of things, we started to engage with app dev teams. At the time, we thought this was the first thing we should do, and we had a bit of back and forth about when should we engage with developers and who's going to use it, but we decided that ultimately the developers don't know what they don't know. So we thought we'll build our platform first, make sure our house is in order, and then we can go out to them and say, this is how we engage. So that's kind of how the platform was conceived from start to finish. A little bit of a deeper dive on Flux, because again, KCD is more Kubernetes related. This is just a little outline of the repo that we have, kind of made slightly more generic, but it's just a little bit of something to see that's a bit more interesting than some of these diagrams. But the decisions that we made were to move to fewer, larger clusters. So perhaps in terms of scale, this is peanuts to some of you in the room, but we went for 4 non-prod clusters and 2 in prod. This is based on kind of back-of-the-envelope calculations of the number of workloads we had and resilience and whatnot. So we made them more generic as well. Previously, our clusters were tied to the work stream that the applications lived in, so clients or investments or what have you. And we realized that was kind of more, we wanted cattle, not pets, that kind of idea. So completely generic. They are called things like cluster 1, 2, 3, and 4. Keep it nice and simple and generic. And then we really made heavy use of the base and overlay Flux configuration. So we have that base folder, you make a single update to a single file and update all your clusters in that particular environment. So these decisions here were just generally how we wanted to configure Flux. There's all sorts of ways to do it. We tried to stick with best practice where we could, but this is what we have at the moment. And then kind of finally, from me, we want to embrace open source tools a lot more. We've been to a few of these events, KTDs, KubeCons, whatever, and we've seen the work people in the room do. We also want to kind of push it. If you're working in an enterprise, it can be tempting to go for a paid product because you get an SLA and what have you. But there are actually a number of excellent tools that most clusters run on, so we want to really embrace that and try and kind of push for these. This is just the ones that we use in the majority of our clusters. We do have other open source tools, and we're trying to push for more wherever we can. But generally, it's just a way of making sure that we're staying with the community and moving with all the best practice that comes with. And now I'll pass over to Andrew to talk about how we actually migrated people to the platform.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got this fantastic new cloud-native Kubernetes platform. But as the old saying goes, just because you build it doesn't mean they will come. So what do we have to do to actually get these 1,600 developer workloads onto this new platform? So first step is identifying those workloads and finding out who owns it, who's going to take responsibility for the application and its migration. And it just opens up that dialogue with the developer, with the development team as to what's going on in the next steps. We then need to create a migration checklist. So this is just a step-by-step guide of how do we actually technically do this migration. And it needs to be written and documented in a way so even the graduates we're taking through our team can pick it up and run with it. For obvious reasons, we're going to migrate non-prod first, sensible reason. Aiming to do 100% of non-prods, aiming to do about 95% of prod. Main reasons being that we anticipate that some of our production applications are going to need to remain on-prem because they need access to on-prem systems, resources, or databases. So that's the plan. And then this is all a very iterative process. We're going to come across issues, we're going to come across challenges, and we just need to make sure that everyone working on this it's known, it's documented, our migration checklist is updated with that in mind, okay? So what does the actual migration checklist look like at a closer level? So app owner survey, like I mentioned before, we need to open up this dialogue and discussion with the application owner. First question that we ask, is this still needed? Is it still being used? Can it be decommissioned? If so, it's just a matter of scaling that down, taking it as complete and moving on to the next one. If it's still needed, we go through the process on the technical side, creating namespaces, updating firewall rules, doing a code change to update like deployment pipelines, and then ultimately just deploying to our new AKS cluster. All going well, we just scale down our old PKS deployment. If it doesn't go well, it's just a case of maybe reversing that DNS change, scaling up the PKS deployment, and then just scaling back down the AKS one. So we're not actually deleting anything at this point. We've got a very kind of safe backup plan if we need to, if that's needed. So for the actual non-prod migration itself, for those that like a graph and stats, this is kind of what it looks like. You can see we did just under 1,300 deployments. It took about maybe 2.5 months, a bit of a slow start, and then kind of start ticking up after a while. For non-prod migrations, developers are quite happy for this to happen during, like in hours. They don't mind a bit of downtime, not that we're expecting any, but they're a little bit more relaxed. But for production, for comparison, you can see here about a quarter of the number of deployments, just under 400, but actually took us longer. Developers weren't as happy or a bit more cautious about things happening during work hours. A bit more coordination was needed just to maybe find a time that suited them. But it's much more us working around their work lines and timelines as opposed to us just migrating it for them. So that gives you an idea of what that kind of looked like. Adding both timelines together, it took the best part of a year. You can see a kind of glaring flat line around Christmas when we all took a break. Then we came back to it in January and just finished off the last of it. So the good news with this is that we actually migrated 100% of our applications, the ones that we anticipate that need to be left on-prem. There were some issues, but they were resolved from an engineering point of view, so they're quite happy for them to be moved. So as far as we go, like we're quite happy with this, but just a massive effort in place. As we built these new Kubernetes platforms, we also underwent an internal training program called KubeCamp. So this was a blended learning where we had access to a cloud guru, and we're also doing like internal homemade labs, and we also had SMEs present Baillie Gifford specific context around how we use Kubernetes. So this was really to allow developers to be more confident in debugging and fixing their own issues. And you can see here, a 50% reduction in Kubernetes-related support tickets, which is like a massive win, and 100% self-reported skill increase. So again, it's just allowing developers who maybe haven't been exposed to Kubernetes, just give them the chance to learn about it, give them the Baillie Gifford context, and just give them confidence to debug things on their own time. So this was a massive internal success. We're on to just finished our 9th iteration, over 100 attendees. But externally, we were also nominated for the best use of blended learning from the Learning Technologies Awards. So a massive success all around. And again, the main outcome is just giving the developers more confidence to debug and do what they need to do. And again, this wasn't an end goal, but we did encourage developers to go and get certified. We're very proactive in our self-development and learning within Baillie Gifford, so it's always encouraged. You can see the CCAD exam here has been a massive success. Also happy to say that we have 2 Cubestronauts within Baillie Gifford. I think the first 2 of 25 in Scotland, and over the last couple of weeks, Duncan also got his Golden Cubestronaut award, so first in Scotland, so congratulations, Duncan. Yeah. That's a good opportunity for a water break.
Cheers, that was unexpected.
He's still waiting for his golden cap, so if anyone knows him, he's going to get it. But yeah, so that's it. So we did our migrations, but that's not the end. Like, what did we learn? What are the lessons learned as part of this? So if you remember the slide from the start, these were our main pain points. This is where we were at. So what does this look like now? So we've got our Terraform AKS clusters. We're no longer using bash scripts. We're no longer using Azure DevOps. We've got Flux platform workloads. So again, removing those bash scripts, removing those pipelines. Everything's in state. Everything's in our code base. Everything goes through that PR change. We've got a more robust CI/CD as part of that. And code is now the source of truth. And that's a really big thing here. It's like everything can be tied back to a code base. Everything can be seen in state. So I believe we achieved what we wanted to, but we also saw some extra benefits while going alongside this. And these were things that either just popped up along or just unseen happenstances. As I mentioned before, we've got 100% of our production workloads migrated. So we're now on a single cloud platform. We're able to just completely decommission it and remove our old on-prem clusters. So massive win from a maintenance point of view for us as platform owners, massive win from a cost point of view, massive win. So it was great. Workload decommissions, like I said, we managed to decommission around, I think it was like 15% of our application. So again, now that we're in the cloud, if we're not using something, we need to get into that mindset of just getting it removed and decommissioned or switched off or whatever. So good from that point of view, also good from a housekeeping point of view. And Azure managed identities. So now that we're in the cloud, now we're in Azure, we can assign an Azure managed identity to a Kubernetes service account. From a developer's point of view, they can get rid of access, keys, and secrets. It just allows that kind of resource-to-resource communication without any of that authentication path that we were getting before. So a big win for developers, but for us as platform owners, as cloud engineers, we're very happy with it as well. We're very much something that we're using on a day-to-day basis now. Flux upgrades. So again, big fans of Flux, but this wasn't the part of this that was unforeseen. It's like the day two operations. If we ever want to upgrade like a Helm chart of an open source tool that we're using, it's a code change and a pull request, and then Flux handles the rest. It's just a nice to have day two. It's been very nice. Our workflow's changed around it. And then cluster scaling. So now that we're in the cloud, everything's terraformed, we can just scale up and scale down as and when we need to. We don't have to worry about pre-provisioning things. We don't have to worry about things just sitting there anymore. It should all just kind of be handled for us in a much quicker and streamlined way. So all in all, a great success. We'll pat ourselves on the back. I know I've been very positive about this the whole time, but there has been some not so nice lessons learned as part of this. Migration fatigue is a big one. As I said before, this was the best part of a year. A massive amount of engineering resource, a massive amount of like developer communication and collaboration. We pushed ourselves to get the last of the migrations done before the end of the year, at the start of this year. But I'd be doing it injustice if we didn't talk about this, because it was a massive project, a massive effort across the board. So it has to be acknowledged, right? This thing just doesn't just happen overnight. It took a lot of planning, took a lot of effort from a lot of people and a lot of teams. Code visibility. So it's not often, maybe we don't do it enough, get to peek at the code bases for our application developers and see what's going on. We do have a golden path to allow developers to follow a kind of certain structured CI/CD template, standardized way. But what we were seeing is that actually developers at the time, they wouldn't always follow this, or maybe they'd work around issues, or maybe they just go off and do their own thing. So again, it's just, now that we've opened this dialogue with developers, maybe we need to keep it open and chat about it and see why are they working around these things? If what we've provided for them isn't suitable, why is that? Again, this kind of ties into customer focus. It's just differing views, what the developers have as their priority in adding business value, and what we have as our priority as platform owners and maintainers. And it kind of ties into this mindset shift as well. So you're in the cloud, you're paying for what you use, and you're also paying for what you don't use. So turn things off, scale things down, delete things where necessary. And that's it. I think a big part of this is the communication. And it's been said a lot this morning already. It's keeping that dialogue open with our developers, get the buy-in, take people with you on the journey. And it's a community effort, not just internally within Baillie Gifford, but the communities, like conferences like this, the open source community, the cloud native community. It's just, I'd be lying if I said that we didn't build a new platform on the shoulders of giants, because a lot of these tools are open source. We're saying like Stefan's talk this morning again, we're using a lot of tools that have had a massive amount of community effort involved, and then we're just bringing it in and building our own platforms on top of it. So again, just acknowledging that fact. Okay, so built our platform, migrated everything, we've learned some lessons. What's next? Looking at the future. So again, looking at open source tools again, we're talking about self-service platforms, enabling user autonomy and control. So now that we're terraforming a lot of our system workloads, namespaces, or whatever, how do we allow developers just to be self-served and do that by themselves? Service mesh, service-to-service communication. Again, just looking towards industry, looking at what's going on, looking at other tools that are coming up. We've already brought this in, we've already started looking at it. Policy as code. So again, big fans of using code base as your source of truth. We're using tools like Wiz as our cloud security platform, but how do we then start writing policy as code instead of just policy as manual intervention? And we're starting to look at tools like Kubernetes to handle this for us as well. So it's just another natural step towards using a code base to handle things for you. And now that we're in the cloud and using cloud native applications, I think it's time that we revisit our observability framework and look at the tools that we are using and what we think we can utilize better. What are the new pain points? And again, just to tie into this, open source tool, an ongoing review of tooling. Duncan mentioned Spacelift again before. We don't use open source tools because they're free at a cost to us. We use the right tool for the right job, whether that's open source, whether it's a third-party vendor. It's just an ongoing evaluation of what we're actually using, what we need, what are the new pain points, what we think we can do better. And I think that's really just about time to wrap it up. So just to revisit where we were. Our self-managed clusters on-prem, we talked about the pain points, we talked about what we wanted and what we think we could achieve and do better. We built this new cloud-native Kubernetes single platform. We migrated 100% of our applications, which has been a massive win, but it came at the cost of migration fatigue, a lot of engineering resource, a lot of effort from a lot of people, and that kind of ties into the DevOps 3Ps of people, process, and products. I think we've learned that we need to keep that kind of dialogue open with our developers and just keep it open, not just opening it as and when we need it. A lot of talk this morning about creating a product and owning it as a product and just involving people as part of it. So with that in mind, the migration has come to an end. So as this talk, I think thank you all very much for listening and stopping by. I'm not sure if we have time for questions or are we taking questions. So apparently we've got time for questions. So if you have any, we'll take them.
First of all, thank you so much, Andre and Duncan.
We got 10 minutes.
I know,